Hello, and welcome to another video from 3.5 Archive. Today we're going to be doing our 64th D&D 3.5 Prestige class review, and we're going to be looking at the Scar Enforcer Prestige class from the Races of Destiny sourcebook. Scar Enforcers are bitter half-elves that have been rejected by both sides of their ancestry. Both humans and elves have scorned them in some way, and now they band with other half-elves, collectively known as the Scars, and they will, stealthily assassinate various members of human and elf society in order to wreak their vengeance. So whatever grievance the half-elves have, depending on your world, it could be a variety of different things. And if there isn't that sort of cultural thing in your world where half-elves are kind of out of place in society, as they're kind of caught between human and elven, cultures, then this prestige class really doesn't have much of a place, as it is focused exclusively on half-elves that target elves and humans. Maybe you could have this, be against drow elves and humans if they were an alliance in your world. You could adapt it for that. There's a variety of different ways that you could make this prestige class different, but in its base form, that's the sort of lore behind it, and if you don't have that in your world, then you probably don't want to allow this prestige class. So, what do you need to become a Scar Enforcer so that you can wreak vengeance on your various ancestors? You need to be a half-elf, of course. You need to be of any non-good alignment. So the Scar Enforcers aren't really looked at as righteous, but they can be not necessarily considered evil. They could be neutral, lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, depending. You need a base attack bonus of +3, and you need 8 ranks in Bluff, and then 4 ranks in Hide and Move Silently. So these requirements really make it clear that the class is geared toward rogues, maybe bards, some fighters, some beguilers, that sort of thing. Maybe a hexblade would be an interesting choice for this one. But for the most part, it's going to be geared toward rogues, toward half-elf rogues. So let's look at what you get from this prestige class. You're going to get a D8 hit die, and you're going to get a 3/4 base attack bonus, and a good will save. A little bit different from a rogue or a bard, but the good will save is nice. You have decent combat stats as a sort of second line fighter. And given that this prestige class has a sneak attack progression, it's going to be a little bit better than a rogue in terms of hit points and that sort of thing. So let's look at what features you get. At level 1, you're going to get Favored Enemy against humans and elves. So you're going to get a +2 on weapon damage rolls against these races, as well as bonuses on various skills: Bluff, Listen, Sense Motive, Spot, and Survival. Pretty self-explanatory and pretty narrow. Humans are a common enemy in a lot of campaigns. I mean, it's rare that you get through an entire campaign without fighting at least one other human, but elves are a little bit less common, and honestly, having the choice made for you makes an already narrow class feature even worse. I mean, Favored Enemy is not a extremely powerful class feature, so having that choice made for you just makes it even weaker. Not a good start to this prestige class. At level 2, you get Smite Enemy. You can deliver a powerful melee attack to a human or elf foe. This is effectively Smite Evil, but against humans or elves. You add your Charisma bonus on your attack roll and do an extra 1 point of damage per class level. Not character level, class level. So you're going to be already behind compared to a Paladin would be at this level. And then at 5th level, you get 2 uses per day. 8th level, you get 3 uses per day. And you start out, of course, at 1 use per day. And again, just being able to smite humans or elves makes, this feature pretty much useless unless you're fighting those types of creatures. Again, this prestige class is quite likely geared toward, a campaign villain or something like that, or a particular heavily role-playing based campaign that's either solo or with a few characters that maybe all go into this prestige class. So it's a very niche prestige class as is. It's good to give some understanding there, but getting a worse Smite Evil really isn't the way to go. And keep in mind that you could be playing as a ranger and be getting this Favored Enemy bonus already as is. Maybe if you did come into this after 5 levels of Ranger somehow, if you somehow got those ranks of Bluff, then you could get, +6 against humans when you normally have to wait again until level 10. But that's just not worth it, and you can't do that anyway. So it's really hard to justify taking levels in this prestige class, even if you are focused on just fighting humans and elves. At 3rd level, you get 1d6 of sneak attack damage, and of course it stacks with your levels of sneak attack that you already have, which you probably do. Another thing to point out is that you do get advancement in spellcasting if you came into this as a bard, but it's only once every other level. So after 10 levels in this prestige class, your bard spellcasting, presumably, or whatever spellcasting you have, would only have gone up by 5 levels. So it's almost not worth mentioning. It's going to be such a slow advancement that you would expect to have at least that, if not better. But it does make sense thematically, as it doesn't really seem like a spellcasting focused class. At level 4, you're going to gain Disguise Self. It lets you use Disguise Self 3 times per day as a spell-like ability, but only to assume the appearance of a human or elf. This is presumably so that you can blend in their society, and thus be better able to get closer to your victims and assassinate them. Is this any good? Well, it's good if you're playing this Prestige class for its intended purpose, and yes, a lot of the time when you use Disguise Self, it is going to be to take the form as a human. If you're playing in your typical D&D campaign world, that's still going to be at least mostly humans, but it's such a narrow ability, and again, you're giving up so much spellcasting potential as a bard that if you just stayed a bard, you would have been able to use Disguise Self or Alter Self as much as you wanted. And then after that, at 5th level, you gain a second use of Smite Enemy, and then at 6th level, you gain 2d6 Sneak Attack. And then at 7th level, you gain Hide in Plain Sight, which works just like the Ranger class feature. It lets you hide in natural terrain, even while being observed. For a Prestige class that seems oriented toward an urban campaign, this is a little bit odd. It kind of seems to require you to be in a natural setting. You'd think that it would at least work in an urban environment. Maybe it's meant to, maybe it doesn't really specify, and you can, but it says natural environment here, so that's kind of what you would tend to expect. I guess you can hide in some hedgerows or shrubberies or something like that. Maybe in the royal garden to attack the human or elf prince while they're out on their nightly walk, or that sort of thing. It's not really a great feature. It's something that you're going to get, maybe later on anyway. And again, if you continued as bard, it would just be more castings of invisibility that you could use, which is even better than Hide in Plain Sight. Then at level 8, you get 3 uses per day of the Smite Enemy. At 9th level, you get your 3d6 Sneak Attack. And finally, at 10th level for the Capstone of the Prestige class, we get one that's very fitting thematically, but just really disappointing mechanically. You leave behind your racial heritage entirely. You are no longer considered an elf or human for the purpose of beneficial or harmful effects. You still count as a half-elf for the purpose of qualifying for the class. So, the idea here is that you kind of shrug off your racial heritage entirely, which might be great for your self-actualization or whatever, but it's not going to be very good for you as a character. This is really unclear on what exactly it entails. Do you lose your immunity to sleep effects? Are you just not affected by, enemy rangers with favored enemy against humans or elves? Maybe you're immune to the attacks, or at least less affected by the attacks of other Scar Enforcers because of that. Whatever the reason, this is a, again, very thematic, but very disappointing Capstone ability. There's almost no reason why you would want this. This is so situational that it wouldn't even really be worth it as a skill trick, or a secondary ability of a regular class. There's just nothing that you would want from this, and alongside the other features, which are just kind of watered-down versions of various classes, it's really hard to recommend the Scar Enforcer to anyone. It's just got nothing that it really offers that's unique to it or is particularly powerful, and as a result, you're just going to feel like you wasted your time. It's a good thing that this Prestige class has very light requirements, because what it gives in return is very light as well. We have to give the Scar Enforcer 4 stars for concept, but really 1 star for execution, and in some ways that's being generous. Yes, it does improve your sneak attack, could give your bard character sneak attack, but they could get that from multi-classing into rogue. Along that time, they're going to be getting barely any spellcasting progression if they are a bard, and they're going to be getting a weaker sneak attack progression if they're a rogue. So there's really no reason to take this Prestige class. It might be okay for a villain character, but even then that's going to be a pretty weak villain against your characters as a DM. So that's going to be about it for this D&D 3.5 Prestige class review. Please like, share, comment, subscribe, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time here on 3.5 Archive.